We have been talking about all sorts of different things. We kind of hit on a different topic every time we come together. Usually I have my co-host Rachel here with me, but she's not here today because I'm just hanging out one-on-one with my good friend, old youth student, now compadre, homie, friend, adult, which is weird. Austin Lively's hanging out with us today. Thanks for being here, man.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Austin, why don't you introduce yourself a little bit? Tell us how long you've been at the church.
Yeah.
Tell us about your wonderful wife.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you live? What do you do for work? All those kinds of things.
Yeah. I mean, like you said, my name's Austin Lively. I live just right across the street here in Mill Creek.
Did you walk?
I did not walk.
Wow.
I could have. I
Wow.
was running a little late on time, but I could totally have walked. So that's kind of conviction right there. But I've been at the church. I was trying to remember. I think it was since 2011, so 9 years. That
Sounds about right.
Yeah, exactly. So I started in the youth ministry, I think my 8th grade to freshman year, and then I just became a youth leader, and I haven't stopped. I mean, this is actually my last year, which is crazy to think about.
Wah, wah, wah.
I know.
All
So-
good things come to an end.
Oh,
right?
exactly, right? So,
I know that.
Right, exactly. So I am married to my wonderful wife Marissa. We met actually in the youth ministry, and next month will be about 2 years married, which is
About
crazy.
2 months, or will it be, or 2 years married?
Exactly.
It will
2 years.
be 2 years married, or will it be about 2 months married? 2 years married.
It'll be exactly. No. It'll be about. You're right. So on the 15th
Okay.
of July.
You should know that.
I should know that. I really think it's the 15th. I get so confused because Marissa's birthday is the 18th of September.
Okay, cut that
and the
out. Cut
15th
that
I
out. We
know.
don't want Marissa to see that.
You could do a little
So
voiceover.
on July 15th, you'll
Yep.
be married 2 years.
2 years, which is
Awesome.
wild. Yep.
Love it.
Yeah, and we're loving it. I work at Zillow, which has been amazing for us. We're actually working remote,
Yeah.
which is great. So still just across the street.
Awesome company to work for.
Oh, great company. Yeah, they've really
tell
blessed
the
us.
people what Zillow just hooked you up with.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So Zillow gives us perks such as paying for gym memberships, but because gyms aren't open right now, they now allow fitness reimbursement. So any tools and stuff. So that includes Peloton. So we just got a Peloton, which is super cool. And Zillow's hooking
Now
it up.
everyone watching is gonna be like, "I'm going to work for
I
Zillow."
know, I know, right? Exactly. So they're definitely blessing us, which has
That's
been
awesome.
amazing.
That's cool. I'm glad you're blessed with that job.
Yeah.
Well, dude, thanks for being here with us today. We talk about something different every week, but I was specifically thinking of you when Rachel and I were thinking of some different things that we wanted to talk through, and this conversation of, breaking the chain kind of came about, and that's a weird thing to say, especially breaking the chain. What the heck does that mean? Is that a power team reference? I don't know what that is.
Classic power team.
But we started to think about how often, especially in my experience as a youth pastor for so many years, we come across young people who are youth students or even young adults who were kind of raised in a certain way, or raised by parents, or raised by or who just were exposed to different types of dysfunction, different habits, different addictions, things like that because you witness it, it so easily can become, you can just so easily be tied up in the chain that kind of runs through your family line. And, you immediately came to my mind because of our experience in youth ministry and walking through some of the stuff with you as you kind of navigated some of that as well. You want to just share with us a little bit about your story, you know, as a kid growing up, and just kind of some of the things that you were faced with, and maybe even touch on, some of the fears that you had associated with, who you were going to become and what that was going to look like for your life growing up.
For sure, yeah. Yeah, great. So my story really begins with my mom, and for those of you who know my mom, Tanya, she's amazing.
Shout out Tanya Lively.
She is amazing. But her story really started off in Everett, and when she turned 14, she actually had her first child, and that was just a curveball. And she was pressured on so many angles. She was actually kicked out of the church at 14, and that that kind of began her struggle, and something that I admire about her. She's just super resilient. But when she was 19, she had me and with my dad, and we kind of grew up like a normal life at the beginning. I mean, we're in Everett, and it wasn't the most glamorous, but it wasn't all that bad until about fourth grade, where my dad had an affair and they got a divorce. And when that happened, I was exposed to a lot of things that most fourth graders really aren't exposed to, you know, like what an affair is, different drug addictions that really run deep in the family. I found out about addictions with grandparents, uncles, stuff like that. And really didn't know the Lord, didn't grow up in the church because we were so disconnected. Until about freshman year, someone invited me to youth group. And that was a turning point in my life, right? So they invited me to Uprising, met a lot of my friends that I still have today. And when I was revealed to not only, you know, God who has this amazing plan for me, but really a Father in heaven who really had my best interests at heart and his plans for me, that's been amazing, especially because not having a father growing up, that was really huge for me, you know, because when you're in a single family home, and my story isn't like unique, like 50% of marriages end in divorce,
right.
and there's a lot of single parent families. It's not very unique, but the one thing that you really do is you compare yourself with other people. You know, my mom worked her butt off to live in a place like Mukilteo as a single parent, and we were able to go to Kamiak, which is a very nice school to go to, but a lot of double parent homes. So you're always comparing yourself. People have the newest things and dad that stuff. So really that comparison really hurt me, but going to a place where I can meet the Lord and grow in new community, that has been amazing. So, yeah.
I love the story of, you know, your relationship with your dad.
Yeah, exactly.
As things have continued to progress through your life. Because I remember meeting you when you came into the youth ministry, and your relationship with your dad was, I mean, nothing.
Right.
Essentially.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Talk a little bit about how not having a dad in your home affected you and your perspective of what you were going to be as a father, or what what fears did you have associated with that?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I think having a dad, especially for a son, you know, a guy, is like, that's just such a foundational thing, I think, that we like look for in our lives, right? And so my relationship with my dad, like once that affair happened, like it was very disconnected. You know, we were going back and forth with different visitation rights. You know, we were in the courtroom. So like the way that I perceived my dad was totally different than what was used to, right? And you know, it was much more than just the affair, but like he had an addiction. Not only him, but his dad before that, and other, you know, family members around that. And so, you know, the fear that crippled me was I have two sides of the family where, you know, it's broken. We're all broken, really, but you know, when you hear like, you know, alcoholism is a genetic thing, like you also are at risk for that, and as well as drug addiction. So a lot of things, it just felt like my story was already written out, and it felt like my destiny was already made. You know, wow. I'm just going to be in this forever, right? This is just the cards I was dealt when I was born. And that fear was super hard. You know, I didn't really believe in myself going into school. I didn't really try that hard at high school. And it definitely, and especially when marriage came, you know, we were in pre-marriage counseling, which if you're engaged, I really encourage you to do.
Gotta do it. Good shout out. Good shout out.
Yeah, it was actually really foundational for our marriage. They really talk about how your experience with mom and dad will affect how you are to your wife, right? So like I did not have that, like really understand, like when the only kind of example that I've seen was when I was a kid, and it wasn't really all that there, right? A lot of fighting and hurt. So I was very scared, but it also motivated me. And really, it really changed and motivated me when I changed my community that I was in.
Oh, that's
you
good.
know, because I was around high school friends, and they're awesome, but like they don't really like encourage you, and you know, they kind of like talk about what they have and what we have and stuff like that. But when I was in a community like youth group, and really changed my friends that I was around, instead of being influenced like by the crowds at school. I was being influenced by people who had my best interests at heart. And so I think that really encouraged me.
That's good.
But the fear was really strong, definitely.
What were some of the things that you saw? You talk about this transition of community and
Yeah.
what that did for you. What were some of the things that you saw that began to paint a new picture
Yeah.
of potentially what your life could be, or what it would look like to have, a different kind of marriage, or a different kind of life than maybe your dad had demonstrated for you, or
Absolutely.
you've seen in your family line?
Absolutely. Well, when you're in an abusive relationship with your father, or just a bad relationship with your father, you don't really have a lot of trust with like men figures. It's kind of a weird dichotomy, because like you don't really want to open yourself up, but you still crave that relationship. And I think that craving comes from something deeper, which is a relationship with our Heavenly Father. So it was really hard opening up, but really when I saw the men in our church, when I saw them and the way they talked about their wives, which was totally different than the way I saw my dad talk about my mom, And so when I saw that, I was filled with hope, right? And when you read scriptures about how God has a plan for you, a plan to prosper you and not harm you, and it just gives you hope, and it gives you this new idea of life. And it's totally changed the way that I view the things I have now. Growing up from someone who didn't really have a lot of things, I've had an awesome mom who has worked her butt off to get us to where we are, but it just makes me so much more appreciative of things, and I have that gratitude.
That's great.
But I think, I can't remember the question.
Just things that
Yeah.
things that kind of repainted the picture for
Yeah.
what you saw.
Exactly.
That was really good.
Yeah.
One of the things that I was thinking was, there was, I remember, this is like still some of my favorite things to think
Yeah.
back on. I still remember moments, in youth ministry, being down at the altar with
Yeah.
you, just kind of both of us just crying like little girls,
seriously, right?
But of remembering like, moments where God was really getting a hold of your heart, and it was so clear that you could see a new path,
Yeah.
or you had a new direction. But I think if we're being honest, it's not like there was one moment and it was just turning a different direction. There was moments where you probably like went forward and then like came back, and
Right.
some of those things, those fears crept back in. What were some of the things that you did to help combat that, to continually moving forward, even though there were moments that kind of like knocked you back a few steps? Do you remember like things that you did, or important pivotal moments or conversations you had with people that helped you continue to move forward in that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, I totally remember those times too. And those were some of my favorite moments, honestly. And it is hard, right? I mean, not only did I have that history in my family, but also no one in the Lively family has graduated high school, because, my mom dropped out early, obviously, and my dad did too. And even that, even further was a generation of people who have even graduated college. So I was very intimidated, but I was also motivated. And there's definitely hiccups, right? Teenagers, there's drama, there's stuff like that. And I think perspective is super powerful. Honestly, when we look at our lives, and it's funny, the longer that I've had my relationship with Christ, the easier it is to fall into this trap. But you just become kind of numb and kind of used to the routines. But when you realize like the person that you were when you first were saved, and just that realization of the life that you used to live, the life that you used to have, and this new hope and this new future that God is like opening his arms for, that perspective motivates me. It's I don't want to say every day, because obviously there's times where, you kind of step back and stuff like that, right? But, when you have that honest come to Jesus moment again and again, and it's a continual thing, it just reminds you where you were and where you want to go. So I think that has been pretty detrimental to motivating me.
That's really good, man. It's such a unique. I love the seasons of youth ministry, because you get this really unique perspective of being able to watch somebody kind of go through that, and even as you graduated high school and you took these huge steps, you just talked about it, like
Right.
first one in your family to graduate high school,
Yeah.
and then you move on to the internship and you get your AA degree, and you get a great job and you get married, and like
Yeah.
you're taking these huge steps as the first one in your family to
Yeah.
do a lot of these things. And we're also watching what God is doing in your life begin transforming your little brother.
Yeah, absolutely. That was
And
amazing.
talk about your relationship with your brother, if you don't mind, just
Oh,
for a
man.
second,
Yeah.
because I think it's one of the coolest things, because I remember watching you guys really kind of walk in that together.
Yeah,
and I know that was
absolutely.
hard for you for a season to kind of feel like father and brother
Right.
in some
Yeah.
senses. But talk a little bit about what that was like,
Yeah.
walking through that with your brother,
Yeah.
and now the relationship that you guys have with each other.
Oh yeah. So when me and my brother experienced, the divorce, that was something that was just, it would be, traumatic for anybody, but especially my brother was young. I was young. So it was really hard for both of us, but it also bonded us super close because like you said, becoming the man of the house, and that was like spoken over you, right? Like I didn't think that obviously, but like, oh, now you're the man of the house. Like, oh, okay. I'm 12. So that's cool.
I don't have armpit hair.
I know, right? Exactly. So, yeah, the pressure it was hard, but man, like some of my best memories are with my brother, and I could rarely think of a time where we would like fight and want to get resolved, but. Some of the greatest times were at that altar, because we're just trying to figure out this life, right? We're trying to figure out being in a family where there's a lot of dysfunction, and not only like in our family, but like cousins, stuff like that. We just see a lot of brokenness, and luckily now we're seeing God restore and God
Come on.
really like work in those families.
Getting
which is
ready
awesome.
to officiate your family's wedding.
Exactly.
For your cousin?
For my cousin,
Yeah,
for
so
one of my
cool.
cousins. And we have great relationships with those cousins specifically because they went through the same things with divorce and stuff. But yeah, I'm officiating her wedding, which I'm super excited about.
That's awesome.
Yeah, with my brother, he started coming to church and he was very hesitant. And he was hesitant at first because, he'd see me go. I was the only person going to church at the time. And my youth leader, Owen Mather, shout out to Owen, he was only a senior at the time of high school, which is crazy to think about when he started to become my youth leader. But he would come into my house, hang out with my brother, and then we'd leave and go to youth. And eventually he'd come with us. And, that's been super cool because we just learn from like guys like you, Mo. I remember when we were in Mexico at Vicente Guerrero, like you meant so much to us that like we got like a Father's Day card, and a bunch of youth students signed it, because youth ministry and really the church, we're supposed to harbor those who are broken and who are looking for that. And honestly, like that's been super huge in both of our lives, getting that. So
Yeah.
it's been super cool to walk with that with my brother.
That's cool.
Yeah.
We only have a little bit of time left, but talk about your relationship with your dad now,
Yeah, absolutely.
because that's been one of the things that I'm most proud of you for.
Yeah.
Because I know how hard that earlier season was for you, but you have been so intentional about seeking out restoration
Yeah.
and relationship with your father. Talk about that a little
Yeah,
bit.
absolutely. So that really started during my engagement season, because we're inviting both the families and we're trying to get a hold of everybody. And I realized, I have not been intentional about reaching out about my dad, right? And a lot of that comes from resentment. And I think it started when, you could feel like such a victim when you go through that. But when you grow up, I swear, when I hit my 20s, like a light went off, like mom's no longer dumb. I don't know everything for sure. I don't. And I really need these people in my lives. And a major thing that God was really pulling on my heart is just this idea of grace, right? Like in my relationship with Jesus, I was so fast to cling on to that grace and, use that grace. Like, God, you forgave me. I was dirty. And like, God just spoke to me like, what about your father? He needs that too. And he needs that forgiveness too. And so I was on a year hunt looking for him to invite him to my wedding, really, but I could not find him. Unfortunately, for the past 4 years, he's been homeless and, he's been on the streets, but I finally got a hold of him. I want to say like a couple months after the wedding, and on Facebook, I was like going through all of his Facebook friends. He has like 12 profiles. I'm like, man, like, yeah. So, and I finally got a hold of him and I was like, hey, I just want to meet up. It's been a long time. And we met up at a coffee shop, and we just began to really reconnect. And I was like, I really needed to protect my heart, because you know, it's easy to come up with this idea like, oh, it's going to be like old times, we're going to throw the baseball around, and you know, it's going to be like that. But really, like, I just felt like instead of just being there as his son, I just want to be Jesus to him right now, you know, because a lot of people could be angry, frustrated, but man, God has a plan for him. So I was able to, you know, just talk to him, tell him that, you know, one, I forgive him. I told him, well, you know, it was hard not having a dad, and yeah, we were mad for a bit, but you know, God loves you, God forgives you, and I want to forgive you too. And so that's been super cool. That was really awesome to see. And he actually got into a house, and he's been sober for a long time now, which is awesome, coming up on a year. And so just continue praying for him, and yeah, so that's been super cool.
It's awesome. It's awesome.
Yeah.
I really appreciate you sharing your story, because I think there's probably a lot of people who maybe their story doesn't, you know, reflect exactly what your story was. But the reality is, you know, there's so many of us. You talked about like growing up with brokenness. Well, that's something everyone can relate with, right?
Yeah.
The levels of brokenness are different for every person, and the types of brokenness are different. But we can all relate with the aspect of growing up around brokenness, because we're all broken, right?
100%.
But you know, I love the fact that you mentioned you could look back to who you were, and you can look at who you are now,
right,
and say, it's only Jesus.
Exactly, 100%.
And I think that's, you know, when we wanted to talk about what does it look like to break the chain, you know, in the family, you know, I hope as you've been watching this, you recognize that there's hope. You know, there's hope.
Exactly.
You know, you could be in a place where you were looking at your life and there was no possible way to get to where you wanted to be. And yet with Jesus, there is hope for your future. There's hope through the alcoholism. There's hope through the fatherless. There's hope through the motherless. There's hope for the broken. There's hope for the hurting. There's hope for everyone.
Yeah.
And regardless of what your family tree has looked like, and regardless of what has happened before you, there is a way for you.
For sure.
And it's not easy. Right. I mean, there were some moments where you know, you came back and forth. I remember specifically one time hiking up to the top of Mount Pilchuck.
I remember that.
We literally went on a hike just so that I could like talk with you one-on-one.
Exactly.
But I remember those moments, and it wasn't always easy.
Right.
But I love how you talked about the community that was around you.
Exactly.
And the people in your life that you met that began shifting perspective for you, giving you new perspective of what was available to you, and how that has brought you to where you are, man.
Right.
And I'm just super proud of you.
Thanks,
proud of you.
Yeah. Appreciate it.
And I know that for those of you that are watching, you may be thinking, you know, kind of like Austin was thinking at one point in his life, and like so many of us are thinking, like, what is what my family's done mean for my future?
Right.
And I just want you to know, if you're watching this right now, you can break the chain in your family too. You know, you can begin to pave out a new legacy for your life, and a new destiny for your life, and a new family lineage for your life. And Austin, I truly believe that you broke through some of those barriers for your family, so you could begin to branch off some new healthy branches on your family tree. And I know that's going to be the case as you've already started that process with marrying an amazing person like Marissa. And I know that more is to come for you guys as well.
Yeah.
I want to thank you for watching another episode of our Venture Y podcast. Austin, I want to thank you, bro.
Yeah.
Proud of you. And I hope that you join us again next week for another episode of Venture Y podcast every Friday at 7 p.m. or whatever time it is. I can't remember anymore, but I can't remember. But anyways, we love you guys. We're thinking of you, and feel free to comment in the comments below what battles you're walking through, what cycles you're trying to break, what chains you're trying to break, so that we can begin praying with you as well. We love you guys, and we'll see you next week.